Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined today by my brother, the Gritty Broman, behind the camera. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
So today's podcast is with Jim Heffelfinger, and Jim has been on the podcast before. He's a good friend of ours. He is the wildlife science coordinator at Arizona Game and Fish, and I just returned from that hunt I did in Arizona, which was epic. It was pretty awesome. I came home with a nice buck, which I've talked about a little bit. And I wanted to sit down with Jim and do a little podcast on the conditions we encountered down there, because it was like all-time drought, nasty, totally different than any time we've been there before. I wanted to get his take on the drought, on the why didn't we see more big bucks? What about the weather that impacted the deer behavior, because that was kind of shocking. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know about the diet, because we saw more cactus consumption than I've ever seen before. Like nasty, spiky, gnarly cactus from cane cholla, jumping cholla, barrel cactus. The deer were just hammering it all.
Any kind of cactus consumption is alarming to me.
Right.
I thought that's the reason why cactus had spines.
Yeah, and all the deer, their behavior near water, totally different near than I've ever experienced. So I wanted to bounce all that off with Jim. I also wanted to talk to him about Arizona's over-the-counter setup with like unlimited tags for resident, non-resident. Everybody gets to throw their name in the hat, roll the dice, go get a tag, and go and see what you can accomplish. And you have people saying that's wrong. You need to limit, you need to do quotas, you need to do draws. And then you have Arizona being like, do we really need to regulate? And there's arguments on both sides. I've heard both sides. We have a discussion on that. And I'd like to hear more from the audience, those that disagree or agree with the conversation in general.
Comment below.
Yeah, comment below on YouTube. That also helps us with the algorithms. Not that a lot of people watch our podcast, as many as I think. Like we have like a 5% view rate compared to our listen rate.
We need separate YouTube channels, I think is what the answer is there.
Maybe. But we have a film dropping of this exact hunt in a few days. Basically, we're putting this podcast out today, and then the film. First, there's two episodes. One is a deer episode, and the other one's a Javelina episode, and we go into some cool detail on both. This is my longest video I think I've ever made. It's about an hour long, maybe 50 minutes, 55. We're not sure just yet, but
it's Wednesday, it's dropping Sunday, and it's not finished.
Yeah,
Go figure.
But Arizona, I think is an awesome hunt. I hope you guys enjoy the film. It's a different kind of film because it's self-filmed archery bow hunt, and it's hard to film a hunt like that because there's not a lot of action. I can't film another subject. I'm filming myself. It tends to be, and I put the camera down so I could kill, because I can't. So hard to do both at the same time. But I did my best, and I think people will still enjoy it. You get to see lots of wildlife, that's for sure.
Doing some crazy things.
Yeah, doing some cool stuff. So I think you'll like it. We're going to do some giveaways around the film. And
we technically have two films dropping this Sunday.
Sort of, we do. So those of you who watch the mule deer hunts we did this winter with Ryan Lampers and myself and James, and then later with Paley, his daughter Paley.
And his wife Hillary.
We did We've actually have some bonus film that we created. It's another 25 or 25-minute episode. So after Paley got her buck, the series kind of ended, but we had so much footage left over. We went ahead and put another film together, and it's pretty cool. It's kind of Paley's thoughts, about the hunt, and Hillary's, after the fact kind of impressions, and it's a touching video. It's cool. There's a lot of context added to the whole story. It's really cool. It's graphic because the breakdown of the deer is pretty detailed.
Well, Hillary really wanted them organs.
She did. She has lately.
She had a list of organs that she wanted.
Yeah, from adrenals to
She had the ring, the liver, the heart.
Yeah,
The
there's
spleen.
the spleen. There's discussions about what's edible, what isn't in the film, and there's where the bullet went in and how it impacted the body cavity.
There's a perfectly half-skinned deer laying on the ground,
right, with steam coming off, and so it's graphic. There's a lot of it's not graphic necessarily to a hunter who has taken apart an animal,
it's life.
But for people who have, for YouTube, it's graphic. And that brings up this issue with YouTube. There are people that don't understand how YouTube works. And there's a few things that I am frustrated with YouTube. One being in general, and this isn't just with YouTube, this is just on all platforms right now where content is published. We're dealing with a lot of censorship across the board. And I feel like hunting is always in the crosshairs. We kind of made a move saying, hey, folks, please follow us over here on Parler. And the reason for that was just because we saw that there was a lot of canceling and shutting down of voices and people's opinions. And I don't want to support platforms that do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, let everybody have a voice, and what shakes out, shakes out. And then, our Parler was a lot of fun, actually. It was growing pretty good, and then it just got canceled. And the web version is back up again, but it's been a couple of months. But it just got us thinking, where can we put our content where if the powers that be decide we're just going to unplug it? It was kind of shocking to see a perfectly okay app just pulled off of the App Store and iTunes, just done. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, and off of Google Play, done. And the next thing you know, it's like, and off of Amazon servers and off the internet, and then off completely. And I feel like hunting is always in the crosshairs. It's always up for cancellation, especially also gun-related content. You see a lot of that being a lot of gun control in the works and things being targeted there. And we just got to thinking, where can we put our stuff where we can build a community where it's on a platform that I think has a future that can't just be unplugged overnight. And YouTube, when we publish film on YouTube, I've had a number of people say, just stop putting commercials in it so it's not commercial. I see way too many commercials pop up from YouTube. People don't understand that, Gritty, I don't monetize my films. I don't click the button that says make me money off of this. I click the button that says don't run any commercials. But if I put any music in it whatsoever, whether I pay for the license or I don't, and 90% of the time we buy a license for the content, at least we did in the past, until it stopped doing anything, YouTube disputes and flags every video we publish. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem because when they get on there and they shut it off, basically they get on there and they plug in their own commercials and YouTube keeps all the revenue because their justification is because we used a song and we didn't have rights to it. So then we say, no, we have rights. They continue to plug commercials for a couple of weeks. Then they get back to us and say, oh, you're right. Mm-hmm. By then the damage is done. And they don't give us our money back.
Well,
they say
it goes into escrow, but
I've never seen it.
We don't see. There's no
change in our
spreadsheet that they show you. None.
So I'm just like, you know what? I'm frustrated with YouTube. So we moved all of our films to a platform where you can watch all of our films
ad-free,
commercial-free. There's no commercials running in them at all. And we're putting a bunch of podcasts over there that are exclusive to people who join that community.
The same amount of volume that we've been putting out is going to stay the same for everyone across all the platforms. We're just going to start putting out more.
Yep. And it's kind of like we're building basically a community where we would like support directly from the people who want to see extra content. Mm-hmm. So we've built this. It's basically a paywall. And if you want to join that and be a supporter, then you get access to this movie we're doing with Paley and a bunch of other films that we're producing. We have a list that we're working on that are cool. One of our bear series will be probably 4 or 5 parts that we're going to film this coming up. We also will film another 4 or 5 part film series of bear hunts, and one will be for the public and one will be for members. for supporters. And so we're going to announce that on Sunday, how to join and how to follow. And we hope a bunch of people will go over there. It's $7.99 a month. If you do that, you can sign up 1 month and check it all out and then bail, or you can sign up on a subscription and just go for the whole year. Either way, we really hope you go over there and support us over there, because we want to be less dependent on all the partners and stuff. We'd rather be direct to the audience. And I love it that it's commercial free. It's 4K. It's awesome video. We'll be putting exclusive podcasts over there and exclusive films and series throughout the year. We're still going to keep our volume up on the other platforms, but we definitely want to build a community that's offline and isn't dependent on mass numbers of people viewing our content, isn't dependent on sponsor help or partner help, affiliate codes, or anything like that. And we want to see how it does, because that would be ideal. So that's what we're building over there, and I think you'll like it. We'll show plenty of content, just like we have been for everyone. That's free and to the public. But if you want access to all the films commercial free and you want to support our show, sign up over there. We'll give you more information on Sunday. We're also, for those who join that community, we're doing a giveaway. We're giving away a Hoyt RX4 Ultra. We're giving away my Hoyt RX4 Ultra. I have a backup that's like new in the box. I set it up. I've used it just a little bit. Never took it out hunting. It was just my backup. And I love my RX4, which is in this film. And I used in Arizona. I used all season. It's a sweet, sweet bow. I think it retails for $1,700 or something. So, yeah, it's new in the box. And I think it's 28-inch draw, but I think it can be adjusted, give or take some. It's 60 to 70 pounds, and it's sweet. So if you come and you join us over there on our community, we're going to do once a month. We're going to do a big giveaway for anyone who's a member, anyone who joins as a supporter. So we're going to do a Hoyt giveaway this first time, and then I think we're going to do another Hoyt bow giveaway the following month. It's a turbo, brand new in the box, and RX4. And then we have a couple more things we're going to give away as well. Each month, we got some optics and other things that we're going to try to give away a Garmin Zero, which I used on this hunt, which I freaking love, and InReach and other things, some things with Garmin. So we're pretty stoked. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah, support our show over there. We have live streaming that's going to be built onto that platform. What I like about this is none of those films and none of that podcast content is hosted on your traditional platforms where they can just unplug it. They're on servers built from the ground up that are independent and can't be canceled. And the app is cool. The app in the App Store is cool. I like the interface, and it has a social media presence. So it's like a private Facebook group where if you become a member or you're part of that group, basically you can post, comment, engage with the whole community. And I like it because I want to share a lot more than I share, but I stay a little reserved on some of my. I'd like to throw out a question to our community and say, "Hey, what do you guys think about this or this law or this thing being passed?" And have a nuanced conversation with people and be engaged. But on the broader platforms, there's so much vitriol and hate, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to build a community where I can have these conversations. I want to ask people about this conversation I have with Jim about tags and how they run it in Arizona. I want other people's opinions. I just don't want to do it on Facebook and Instagram.
Not only that, but it's a powerful resource. You know, you talked about on this podcast with Jim Heffelfinger, the time of year when you want to go hunt. You call someone who lives in that state and say, hey, well, what are the conditions like?
The other thing, too, is, for example, this film that I'm getting ready to drop, a couple of them, I kind of want to throw out to a whole member community and say, what do you guys think? Should I change something? What did you like? Was this part too slow? If I have 1,000 people get back to me and say,
yay or nay?
Yeah, I liked this long version, the full, but if you do this and that, I think it would, or this didn't interest me. I want that feedback. And then I can launch it on the broad platforms. And so I'm hoping to build a good community over there where that kind of engagement happens. I want to have nuanced conversations, and we live in a culture right now that's so, if you talk about anything that has any level of, that's not safe space, there can be so much time sucked into responding and defending your position. And instead of just saying, well, let's talk about it. I hear your perspective as a guide and outfitter, and then I hear this non-resident perspective and this one. It's hard to have that. There was a golden age. There was a golden age of that on Instagram and Facebook years ago. It seems to be gone. So we're looking at building a new community, and we'll get Lampers involved. He's talking about coming on there, and there's going to be live stream capability on this platform. So we hope to be able to live stream a couple of days a week with the community. And actually it'll be behind the wall. And I like that because, again, we can have conversations that I don't necessarily want to have on a big open scale.
And again, we're still going to be putting out the same stuff. We're still going to be doing the same giveaways like we always do. Like this week, we're giving away a canvas cutter through YouTube.
Yes. So we have a canvas cutter bedroll. What is it? The Fortress or the Dominator? The Dominator.
I don't know, whichever one they want, I suppose.
Yeah. So we love canvas cutter from the beginning. We've been using them for a long time, and we're going to do a giveaway on this week's. If you leave a comment on YouTube on the film, this Arizona archery film, we're going to give away a canvas cutter bedroll, and those guys are awesome. I love the product. I think it's one of those products that people just don't realize how. Once you get it and you use it, you're like, where's this been all my life? Yeah. It's one of those things. So
I had one rolled out in the office and I was taking naps in it. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for indulging us because we're about 15 minutes in and we haven't started the podcast yet. But I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you join us on the community. That's awesome. Remember to look at the codes below in the description field and help us out with all our different partners. There's lots of gear down there, and you get discounts, and it helps us out. Peaks is one of those partners. Get some trekking poles if you don't have them already. Get yourself. I like the Elite poles. There's a few different models, but the Gators are legit.
They're getting ready to come up with a bunch of new stuff. They're constantly tweaking new things.
Yep. So check out Peaks and check out Valkyrie. We use the broadheads on this hunt, and you'll see them in the film. That Valkyrie broadhead, I loved it. I did a podcast on it just a couple of days back. If you want to check out that previous episode, but use the code GRITTY and you save 10% at Valkyrie, and they're not cheap.
No.
So same thing.
Death switch.
The death switch broadhead. Same thing with and the long range. Same thing with canvas cutter. Use the code GRITTY, and I think you save like $50 on a bedroll if you use the code GRITTY. And
it's like 10%. So if you buy the nicest, most gnarly canvas cutter that you can get,
and check out Mountain Ops. Check out Pink Lemonade Ignite. That's my favorite. I also like Citrus Bliss, Blaze Shots. Those are money too. So, all right, let's get into the show. Hope you enjoy this one. Let us know. Leave a comment. We appreciate everything. Thank you for supporting us, and stay gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and today I'm joined by my friend Jim Heffelfinger out of Arizona. Where do you live, by the way?
Yeah, it's a little confusing sometimes because I live in Tucson, but my position's actually Phoenix-based. So sometimes you see my address is Phoenix, but I've been in Tucson for 28 years.
Okay. Tucson. Nice. And you're basically you're the deer biologist out of the Arizona. What's your title exactly?
Yeah, for
Jim?
23 years I was a regional biologist out of the Tucson office, so southeastern Arizona, and I did game management, so all of the game species with white-tailed deer and mule deer and pronghorn and bighorn and bears and lions and 3 species of quail and Gould's turkeys. So really, really super fun stuff. And then the last 5 years I've shifted to a statewide position that's called Wildlife Science Coordinator. It's kind of a science advisor for the department. Okay.
And you've been on the podcast before. We first met the very first time I went down to Arizona over 4 years ago with Randy Newberg. And I met a bunch of you guys. Wade Zerlingo was there and hung out with a number of folks from the Arizona Game and Fish, and got introduced to the what is now considered the annual deer hunt.
Yeah, I would say you got hooked. You got hooked more than introduced.
Yes, I did. I got hooked. And you've been on the podcast a number of times. Kind of throughout, but when we can connect at a trade show, we try to get one then. And if we can get one while we're in Arizona, that's best as well. Couldn't do it this year. We were not connecting, and I was trying so hard to get a deer at all that it was rough. So
yeah, you were focusing on the task at hand.
Yes. So
yeah, I had a bunch going on in January, and I had a couple little windows, and it was hard. I wish you could have got together.
There's a lot of things going on. It's amazing though how clean these Skype calls have been lately. I think after this whole COVID thing struck, the online interaction just stepped up. The technology got pushed, and it's even better than it's ever been. It helps when a guy like you has the headphones and the microphone deal all dialed as well. So
Yep.
So let's talk about this hunt that I just did. It was not easy, Jim, and
it was probably different than the previous years.
It was really tough. So I wanted to talk to you about that. One of the observations, of course, was there was this drought, and it was just we were really far south near the border of Mexico, and it was so dry when we got there. And this is early January. I mean, there was no water, no moisture anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And all the areas where I'd been the last 3 years where I'd been out in deer country, seeing deer, we were going back to our old haunts, our old spots, and they were void of life. Very, very few deer out there. And the ground was dirt or just like a couple inches of grass, really not much there. And it took a while to start figuring out where deer were located. And they were really highly concentrated in certain areas, and almost all of them were near some sort of water source you could kind of bank on. They were, maybe a short jaunt where they could find cover, but they didn't have to travel too far at night to go get water or at last light or early morning, and changed everything. Everything. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we were experiencing was we were having difficulty finding any deer of, two things: age class, but also like antler size, because they don't necessarily coincide. I feel like we saw a lot of deer that maybe last year, and I kind of threw this at you, like, is it possible these deer are 30 inches smaller than they were last year, 20 inches smaller, these mule deer, and then the Coues deer, 10 inches smaller than they were the year before? Like, what is it that we were seeing?
Yeah, I think definitely smaller, but still not to that degree. Probably, I wouldn't suspect 30 inches smaller. But there's no doubt we had a bad year. Normally we'd get about 12 inches of rain around Tucson. This year was at the end of December 2020, along with everything else that happened in 2020. It was the driest year on record for Tucson, the driest year on record. We had 4 inches of rain instead of 12 point something. And so, and when I went down there, I had a couple different hunts with me and my dad and my kids. And when I went down there, knowing it was dry, I was still shocked because I saw desert mule deer. And if the doe had fawns with her this year, there was ribs sticking out. And the habitat, like you said, was just dry and crispy. It was shocking. It was actually pretty disturbing to see what that country looked like. And those deer are out there 24/7 trying to make a living. So like you said, other years you come and we go sit on high points and glass and you'll see deer kind of all over the place because water's distributed, food's distributed everywhere. And so you just go and you get a good vista, start glassing, you pick up some deer. This year, if it wasn't a half a mile from water, there were no deer there. There just weren't deer there. And so you really had to find the water sources. And that doesn't mean a tank that was there last year. It means a tank that still has water in it this year. And you had to be by actual water before you could pick up any deer around there. They were definitely concentrated. And research shows us that that's what happens in real dry times is they're just around those water sources for sure.
Well, we were seeing herds of 60 all in together in one group on a hillside, and then they weren't far from water. They'd go hit that water as the sun was going down, or they'd do it in the dark, and then they'd go right back to their spot, which was, not 500 yards, 1,000 yards from where they were bedding up and hiding out. So it was.
We saw that too. They would get water in the afternoon, early afternoon or mid afternoon, And then you'd watch them, and they'd go and they would bed not far from the water. They were just hanging out there. And when people have done research, this is even before we had all these trail cams, but when people did research, they documented that in the hot months like that, a vast majority of the visits to water is after dark. I mean, they're coming in the dark and drinking during the really hot period.
Yeah. So the thing that I wondered was, how come we were not seeing big bucks? Like we could always find them, both coos and mule deer, throughout the entire month of January. You can find them. They're out there. You just glass long enough, hard enough. We literally, Jim, couldn't find any. So
yeah, I think the nutrition and the heat and just the dryness and the lower nutrition had suppressed that rutting activity. So the timing of the breeding season is timed by changes in day length. And that doesn't change. It's just how many hours of daylight's in a day, and the changes of that as we go into the fall, where you get longer and longer nighttime periods and shorter days as you get towards the fall. So that's what really governs the timing of the rut. But within that window of this overall regulation of timing, cold weather, hot weather, nutrition can have some effect on how intensively they're rutting. If they're in really good physical shape, there's food and water everywhere. The does come into estrus, and the does are affected also by nutrition. Those bucks are just everywhere rutting, and they're happy. It's not too hot. And when the nutrition's really bad or it's excessively hot like that, it's going to suppress things, the activity. They're just not going to feel like running around so much.
Well, and I wondered, because we started to see rut activity after we got rainfall overnight. You started to see some serious movement. Everything started to turn green fast. I was surprised within 4 or 5 days how green everything had popped. And I was like, wow. I mean, this stuff was just on the edge of life. Little greenery, combine that with some little water, and combine that with some sunshine, and all of a sudden they were in their heels trotting around. There was some rut action. I was like, oh wow, okay. Different animals altogether, and they got stupid, which really helped me kill my buck because I need stupid animals. Like when they were tired and lethargic, they just were looking they were alert. And honestly, I know that circadian rhythms and all that you're going to have, the rut has to kick in, or they're just going to miss their window. But does Mother Nature postpone it as long as possible under those conditions? Like if they've got to hit that window so that they're popping the kids out before the heavy winter hits, or whatever drives it, right? But it still seems like most of the deer with that kind of malnutrition and weakness, that nature's going to hold on to that estrus as long as possible, and until they get some water or some signs that it just means a lot of deer kicked in at the same time.
I think it's not so much as just holding on, delaying, hoping that rainfall comes. I think just overall it's suppressed. Just the activity's lower. If the females aren't in good shape, they're not going to come into estrus as strong. And I think things have to be really bad for them not to get into estrus, because it's just such a basic function. But if they're nutritionally stressed and everything's dry, which those deer were, everything's just kind of going to be suppressed. And so it was neat that you got to experience that switch when we got some rainfall, not only in deer behavior, but to see what happens in the desert. That ecosystem's evolved for responding really quickly to just a little bit of rainfall. A lot of those plants have roots that are real shallow under the soil, so that if you just get a little bit of rain, the roots are right there under the soil to take advantage of it. Whereas if you have really deep tap roots, you could get 3 inches of rain and your roots too far deep, it's not going to take advantage of that. So a lot of these cactus have real shallow roots, which is why Javelina can go and root up these prickly pear roots, because they're close to the surface. But then when you get a little bit of rain, you see that how much you can flush. Like those ocotillos, those plants that just look like thorny sticks, those things will leaf out just in a matter of a couple of days. The leaves they're one of the first things that just pop out.
It was like
deer
magic.
will actually go to that first.
It's almost like fixed. Magic. It's like, Ryan and I were talking about it, Lampers, and we're up there, and it's like a couple of days, and all of a sudden, just everything looked lush and ready to be eaten, and the deer seemed to be getting some nutrition that they were not getting a few days prior. The other thing that happened was, as soon as it really dumped rain for a few days, next thing you know, the deer were no longer concentrated around water sources and guzzlers. They just dispersed. They went all over the place. And all of a sudden, I think a lot of the feeding areas near the water sources had been hammered because, they're just all concentrated there. Now they don't need to be next to that because water is plentiful everywhere. All of a sudden, they're getting water, all day long, wherever they're at, and completely night and day. And hunting them got a little bit easier because when they were concentrated around water sources, when you have a herd of 60, a lot of hunters are going to see those deer, and so they get hit a lot because they're all concentrated. Once they dispersed, all the hunters had to disperse too because there's deer spread all over. So,
and the mountain lions did too. When things are dry and they're all concentrated on water, you watch those deer come into water, and they are on point. They know that this is a really high risk environment, and that's why you get them jumping strings near water so much, because when they come in, they're not just sauntering in and relaxing and taking a drink. They are just tense because they just know something's going to happen. They got to get their drink and get out of there quick.
Yep. So that was kind of mind-boggling to see all that difference in the green up right away.
And what you said about them dispersing them with the rainfall, that's been shown with radio collar deer, where they monitor them not every day, but week after week during that dry period, and they're just within a half mile of a water source. And then just the absolute day that it rains everywhere, you see those radio collar deer they just disperse, because now instead of they're feeding on browse because everything's dry, so the only thing they have is leaves and twigs of shrubs, and that gets hit pretty hard, like you said. And as soon as they have some other options, they're out of there.
Yeah. So what we noticed was the food source that was getting hammered constantly was those jumping cactus, the cholla, and these cactus ridges would be there. I just watched them eat that nonstop. Were
you seeing whitetails eat those too? Or was it mule deer? Because mule deer, right, when it's dry, that's called most of that chain fruit cholla probably. There's several different kinds of cholla, and that chain fruit cholla is a really, really important food source when everything's dry, because they'll go and they'll hit those fruits. And the fruits they're green, or they turn yellow after a while, but they don't look a whole lot different than the rest of the plant. So it looks like they're eating cholla. They're eating these chains of fruit that hang down from it. It's really important for desert mule deer in southern Arizona. It's really important for Sonoran pronghorn, the endangered Sonoran pronghorn. Those cactus fruits, those cholla fruits, are really important to them, and they'll be there for sure.
Well, man, just on the ridges, I saw them just take a mouthful of cactus, like the actual. Like I have a video of a doe, it's like as long as my forearm, just grab a chunk of cactus and just eat it. Like, how are they doing that, Jim?
I bet that was the chain fruit, because the chain fruit hangs down and it looks like a stalk of cholla. It just looks like another stalk, and it's longer. But I don't know. I'd be really interested in if they were taking an actual branch of cholla, because I can't fathom how an animal would do that.
It looks like a spiky branch of cholla. Like I'll zoom in on it and stuff, but it's the whole spiky chunk, it looked to me, and they'd have like cholla like stabbed into their face and their lips, and they didn't seem to care at all. They didn't go or jerk their head or nothing. They just walked around with it, and it'd be stuck.
They definitely have a different pain tolerance than we do. You'll see glassing deer, you'll see desert mule deer with these cholla balls stuck to their face and their shoulders.
It didn't seem to bother them. They didn't care.
Yeah.
I was wondering though, like their lips and their noses and stuff, like they're stuck. They have this cholla stuck on their mouth. How are they doing that?
It's amazing. It's like Javelina when you watch them on a prickly pear pad. They don't mess around. They just go in and they grab that prickly pear pad and chomp down, and then they just pull the flesh out. And I don't know how they do that. It's just bizarre, because the inside of their mouth is not hard and calloused. You look at the inside of a Javelina or a deer's mouth.
Yeah,
it's just the inside of a mouth. It's just bizarre. It has to be a difference in pain tolerance, and then I'm sure there's some subtle things with their tongues where they can manipulate some of the spines.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it, because in years prior, I still see him hit that, but gently, and kind of pick around, and I figured they were eating. This time I saw him sometimes I saw him eating the bark. Like there's something around the bark of those things where they're not where the spiky parts are. But then there are times where I just saw them hit the spikes, and they didn't.
Yeah, that is just fleshy cactus, and so it's moist plant material, and it has some vitamins in it. Jackrabbits love that stuff. Jackrabbits will eat all that bark off of those chollas. So it has less spines, and it is some fleshy stuff. It's not ideal food, but it'll get them through a time.
Well, that's what it looked like. It seemed like they were down to those choyas, those particular cactuses, and they were down to the guzzlers and the water sources. Like that was where they were spending most of their time. They'd eat a little grass, but you could tell their heart wasn't in it. I mean, they just kind of nibble and walk around it, and then they were hitting the cactus. So all those cactus ridges is where we were spending a lot of time. There was 3 or 4 or 5 like serious cactus ridges that were near the water source, and they were piled in there. And I think they had cover too, because the cactus ridge is on top, but some reason those cholla around it, there was always a lot of mesquite and other things there too, for shade and for cover. And it seemed like that's just where they were congregated. But as soon as the rain hit, they were like, we're done with this food source.
Yeah, those chollas, they grow on a gravelly limestone soil, and so you'll see them up there on these gravelly limestone ridge tops, whereas down in the lower kind of valleys where the soil's a little tighter and more organic stuff, then you get mesquite and other plants growing. But they love those big ridges like that, and that's a great place to focus. Like when I'm desert mule deer hunting, I'm thinking about how dry it is on any given year. If it's super dry, I'm thinking of cholla. You just go glass those big cholla flats, and that's where you find them.
It seems like it's just critical. So the next question, one of the other questions I had was, you see the cholla, you hit the cholla. That seemed like a no-brainer. That's where they really wanted to spend their time eating. But after that, what other food sources are they hitting in those super dry spells?
It's browse primarily, but the thing is, when it's dry like that, which is why they're all near water, it's exactly why they're all near water, is everything, even the leaves on the bushes, are real low moisture content. They're pretty dried out because of the conditions.
Well, the mesquite trees look like they were dead, like they didn't have any leaves.
They can do that too as a response. Oak trees too, in kind of high elevation, the whitetail stuff, the oak trees, they'll shed their leaves, and it looks like they're dying. And it's just a response to extreme drought, and it'll happen every so many years when it gets really dry. But the deer can eat some mesquite leaves, so that they'll eat some of that. But there's a lot of acacias and other kind of browse that's better for them. But it's all dry, and they'll find little forbs that are all dried up on the ground too, these little broadleaf weeds, and they'll eat that too. But all that dry material in their stomach is like dry plant material. They've got to get some water in there. They're ruminant. They've got these 4-chambered stomachs like cattle, and they've got to ruminate, which means they chew their cud. They spit up some of the food in their mouth. They re-chew it again and swallow it. You can't do that with dry chunks of leaves and grass, and not grass, but forbs. So you've got to get that water in there to make a slurry so they can actually process that food. And that's why that water is so important, is they can get nutrition out of some of that dry, crispy stuff, but not until they get some fluid in there to mix it up.
Gotcha. So they can eat throughout the day and then add water to it later and then chew.
It's like ramen.
Later.
It's like ramen. Yeah, you don't eat it without the water. You got to have some water.
So I've watched them do this, chew all that stuff up, and the water though, just because there was water nearby though, didn't mean that the ground was nutritious. I talked to a few people who are like, well, aren't there guzzlers everywhere and water tanks? I'm like, well, yeah, but that doesn't change the food source.
You're right.
It just keeps them from dying from dehydration.
Yeah, actually, the benefit of those artificial waters, why we put them out there, is not just because deer get thirsty and they need a drink of water, but it's what I was just talking about. They can't process that food unless they've got some open water. And so those water sources distributed out there are done more so that they can process food. And I mean, of course, they need some water too, but that's the big thing, is that if you put a new water source, you've got an area that's 3 miles from any water source, and you put a new water guzzler there, now you've just made all of that habitat around that water source. They're able to occupy it during dry periods because they can come and get water, and then they can eat that food around there. So you can actually expand the amount of habitat that deer can use during really dry years with a well-distributed water development plan.
So one of the other questions, with the Arizona adds those water sources, and there's quite a few, right? And how do you know where to put one?
We do that. Our local wildlife managers who are familiar with the area will think about places where they think deer have everything else they need, but there's just no water sources in a long way. And they'll put those on maps and actually look. And with GIS capabilities, you can plot all the waters on a map. You can give them each a 2-mile radius, draw those circles on your map, and then you can very easily visualize, hey, we've got some gaps here. And that's pretty good. It looks like pretty good deer habitat, but I didn't realize that it's just lacking any water in that area. So they'll plan, and then a lot of the
drill like a well right there. They drill
bunch of different things. What we normally do is water. They're called water catchments because they have a big apron that catches rainfall, drains it into an underground tank, and then from that tank is a pipe that comes out to a drinker that they drink out of. And so during periods of rainfall, it gathers hundreds or thousands of gallons of water into this tank, and then it has this water supply underground during the next 4 or 5 months with no rainfall. And
Nice.
so it just collects the rainfall periodically is normally how that works, rather than drilling holes to the water table.
Gotcha. Okay. So I actually killed my buck. Here he is, Jim. I'll show you my buck.
I only saw him on Instagram.
Yeah.
Man, that's beautiful. I love how thick that is.
He's got that bladed action back here, and I mean, he's got some of that mass on him. I'm stoked. I was really happy with. It was hard to find a mature buck. I mean, Ryan and I were both in a race to find a big mule deer. I was okay with a big coos deer, but Ryan. It's so funny. He was really looking. I found one buck. Ryan found a big buck, bigger than this, and I found one other buck bigger than this. But those were the top three that we saw, and we scoured this south, and
I know. Yeah, you guys were down there a long time. You certainly put the time in.
But I ended up taking that buck. I noticed that the deer were getting water out of those, like, was it limestone maybe? These big flat in the washes. There were these big flat rocks that were just like 8 by 8 feet. And
a lot of that is limestone for sure.
It had that soft kind of limestone feel to it.
Yep.
And there were these like 4 or 5 inch depressions filled with water, little pools. And I noticed these deer were hitting those limestone water pools and those rocks. And I watched a few deer do it in the group this buck was in. And I was like, he's going to get up. When that wind switches, he's going to get up and he's going to walk right over to that water, just like the other 4 or 5 younger deer have already done. He's just too smart. He's not going to do it right now with the wind at his back like these other deer. But when that wind starts blowing in his face, he's going to get up and walk over there and get a drink. Most of these deer probably will. So I set up right over there, and it was cool because I saw a couple deer hit it before, got in the right position, and he followed the script. He followed a doe, and she walked as soon as that wind changed, right? And it was in his face. It was a good crosswind going across. So I set up to the right side, and they would swoop down. So by the time they got out in front of me and then curved back down to the water because the terrain forced them around, I'd be downwind of them over here. But as they came across the top, they wouldn't catch me because the crosswind was, 60, 70 yards below. I waited till the last possible minute, and then I ran up the hill, sat down. Wind was just changed, and they like clockwork got up and did exactly what they'd been doing. I'd watch them bed till the wind switches, and then they get up with the wind in their face and walk. So it was the right.
A lot of people don't realize that all that's going on, and the deer may not even realize it either, but it's through all those eons of evolution, all that stuff's programmed.
Yeah. So I got there, and he ended up circling around right to the water, following the doe. She got a little drink and kind of popped up on the hill. And I could have shot him at 80, 60, 50, but I was really waiting for that shot. I knew where they were going to go. I mean, that's the only reason to walk over here. And then all the deer would turn and then go back up over the top. So if they came, they were coming for that. And I set up with a big Ocotillo behind me, and I was down on my knees in the shadows, just so I have a backdrop behind me, and got to full draw pretty early. And he just stepped out at 43 yards, broadside, just standing there. And
was there some mesquites or something that allowed you to draw? How did where was
there
he
were?
when you were
So I
drawing?
set up. I had an option to set up where there was nothing between us and them, just 100 yards of open, and they would have walked by me at about 40 or 50 yards. But I'd learned earlier in the week and throughout my life that it's different. You can pull that crap off on an elk, but a coos deer, no, and a mule deer, probably not, unless you get lucky and they put their head down or it's in the grass. But the grass wasn't even tall enough that they just had all their visibility on all. It's like they're walking on the moon. And so even if I have a backdrop, they would see that draw. So because I had an option to sneak over and be in that position just as they came into view, I could have. But I was like, how am I going to get to full draw? I mean, by the time they get in bow range, and I don't want to sit behind a bush, because if I get behind a bush, now I can't. Now I'm really limited. So you get in front of the bush, and I was like, well, if I stay right here, there's like 3 big giant mesquite bushes, trees that are just got a bunch of crap around them that gives me time to draw. And then instead of me having a bush directly in front of me, I have nothing in front of me, but I have a screen 30 yards out or 40 yards out. So when they walk behind it, I can do that thing. And there was enough that I was like, if the doe and him are not tight, she's still going to be behind something. I had thought about it all afternoon because I had time to kill. And I was like, this is the setup. So he came down but it ended up being that I drew my bow the second I saw them show up at all. I mean, as soon as I saw just the doe kind of peek over the ridge, I went ahead and drew my bow because I didn't know, if I was going to have that 50-yard shot or whatever. And then as I was at full draw and I saw their behavior, I just held it. And then 2 minutes later, I'm still holding it. And I'm like, okay, this has been a while, but it worked out. I just was like, suck it up, hold it, and wait. This is the moment. Just tough it out. And the concern is you hold it so long that you make a bad shot. But I was really feeling like, no, I'm not there yet. Push it as long as you can without having to let down, because getting to full draw and letting down and getting to full draw again, all of that is the recipe for failure. So I just held it. And then he gave me the shot. So Ryan shoots his big coos buck, right? And I knew kind of he had been on the buck earlier the day before, almost had him a couple of times. So he'd been kind of patterning this buck. And I got to get Ryan's full story, but I texted him right after he shot it and said, how far was the shot? That's my big question, because it's coos deer. And I'm just like, you sucker. How do you do this, right? And he's like, about 18 yards or so. And I'm like, okay. And then my second question was, how did you get to full draw? How? Like, I want to know, was he just running by chasing a doe and you just drew and he was just distracted? What happened? And he said he got in the pinch where he thought they were going to feed through. In fact, he texted me 2 hours before and he said, I'm sitting in the saddle where they're going to pass through. And I think he had intel on where they were going to go because he'd seen them do it before. And so he's like, I'm in the saddle. If he does what I think he's going to do, I'm going to have a close shot. Well, sure enough, deer did what he thought he was going to do perfectly. But Ryan said he came to full draw way early. As soon as they came through, like as soon as he saw they were on their way, I don't know how far away that was, he came to full draw. And he said, I held it for over 3 minutes waiting for that deer.
That's a long time
to come into. He held it forever. But you know what? That's what it takes, because how are you going to draw on a coos deer? Yeah. Even if you have cover, they're going to hear you at that range. And anywhere in between the 50 yards, sub 50 yards on a still hot day, it's like they just sense things. So so it makes sense. He just drew early and held it. And then when that buck came at 18 yards, he still told me, he's like, Brian, I put it behind the shoulder in the kill zone and let it go. And that thing still spun and ended up being a chest shot.
Yeah.
Ended up being a frontal. It ducked and turned and went in through his chest. So it's at amazing. 18 yards, and how many seconds? I mean, that arrow is going close to 300 feet per second. How in the world can they be that fast? So
it's just a twitch, and they're in a whole different orientation.
Yep. So for me, we both kind of did the same thing. Held it forever. Drew early and held it forever. And those desert conditions without wind and other things going in your favor, that's kind of how it's done, Yeah. So back to the deer discussion, like I was kind of surprised by how many people were there. Every year it seems like we're getting more and more people. And one of the things that you and I discussed every year almost is Arizona has an over-the-counter hunt there with long seasons. And you can hunt in August and September, you can hunt in December, you can hunt in January for these, and you can hunt for deer, and it's any deer, it's coos deer or mule deer. You get one deer tag you can fill each year.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have the draw hunts where you can have 2 tags at the same time. You can have your over-the-counter, archery deer tag, but you can also draw like a coos rifle tag at the same time, and it's just whichever tag you fill first.
Mm-hmm. You can just fill one tag.
You got a quota, you got
year.
one tag a year. So the question is, this comes up every year, but I've seen a lot of people complaining about it again this year. And we've talked about this before, and you've kind of changed my opinion on it over time. But the idea of a draw or managing the pressure, there's a lot of people, especially this year, residents that I saw comments and posts on where they were really angry about the fact that it's an over the counter. There's no restrictions really. Tag. And they're like, look, these deer were under a lot of pressure from a drought, and they were already struggling to survive in the water and the food sources. And then you just don't regulate the hunting at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, that just seems wrong. Like there's a better way to do this. But you and I spoke about this before, and I'm actually not sure that there is necessarily a better way. I'm curious, what's your defense for the current model compared to the alternative?
Right. Yeah. See,
some sort of draw or controlled hunt.
Yep. I mean, you framed it really well. A lot of the resident hunters used to have all this to themselves, and then you and Ryan started coming down and screwed everything up. And then telling everybody about it. So I see all those comments
I'd
like
say
that
Randy
too.
Newberg is far more guilty than I am.
That's the deflection of guilt. Yeah, no, you see that, and people are talking about it all the time. I was down in the same area you were, close, a little bit farther north, I think, but same unit and same general area about a week or two before you were, a week before you arrived, I think. And I was out in a whole bunch of different areas, and I saw a few people, but my experience out there wasn't that the hills were crawling with people. I saw some things that I think you wrote and posted about. You saw a lot of people, and I didn't for the three full days that I was out in there, and that was like the second week in January, and I didn't see a lot of people. So it probably depends where you were, and of course we were hitting water. We were near the water like that, but you wouldn't want to change your whole management scheme because of a real unusual year like this where they were close to water and hunters probably were concentrated to where the water was. But you don't take an exceptional, strange year, the driest year in the history of Tucson, and then change your whole deer management system to try to avoid hunters being crowded around there. So I think really in most years when you're out there, you don't see people on top of everybody. We're seeing more and more hunters, and we may have to make some management changes in the future if we've got the archery harvest exceeding what we've set out to be 20% of the harvest in those units. If there's more than 20% of the harvest is due to archers, then we start restricting some of the archery seasons. Like you said, there's August, September, and some units in December and January. And so we can start restricting parts of those time windows down to lower the archery harvest. And that's all in our management scheme. But the idea that there's a whole bunch of people out there taking advantage of our cows, white-tailed deer, and desert mule deer at this time with a bow is not necessarily a negative thing, in my opinion, and the agency's opinion, as long as you're not impacting the resource, impacting the deer population. And we do surveys every year, starting right towards the end of that archery season in mid-January. And we collect data. Actually, it's every other year now, but we collect survey data. We watch the harvest data, the post-hunt questionnaire data that Uncle Kevin needs to turn in after the season. Yeah. we take all that data. I'm always hitting them up with that. We take all that data and we look at it, and every year we look and see whether harvest is excessive or whether it's within the guidelines that we set for management. And so someone's individual experience might be, I had 3 guys around this water hole with me. You guys got to do something about it. But if you step back and look at the big picture, we don't need to impose a bunch of these draconian government regulations on people when it's really not needed to protect the resource.
I really like that approach, actually, and I know a lot of guys are complaining. I'm not sure that I'm convinced that implementing like you said, more government oversight and more control over it actually improves it. I think that, yeah, sure, you could improve the hunt experience by limiting a certain number of hunters in a certain area, but then you also limit everyone's ability to get out and enjoy the hunt the freedom to do so, for example, every year. Maybe you only can get it every third year now. And I look at the thing and I see what you're saying. I was there for a long time. Ryan was there for like 3 weeks, and Ryan was able to take stock as well. And Ryan will always complain if there's one person there. Like Ryan has no tolerance for other hunters being anywhere near him. I'm like, man, if I'm in the hunt, I'll deal with people just like I deal with any other obstacle, and I'll handle that. What I noticed was there was like a full week where I was chasing this buck, and although there were other hunters there, nobody saw him. Nobody.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a big buck out in the open.
I had him all but to myself for like 5 or 6 days. The other thing I noticed was in the morning or in the weekdays, Tuesday through Thursday, nobody's there. I mean, it was really dead. And this was consistent. When the storms hit, I was alone. Not a soul stayed there. They all went home. Everybody went home.
I think I texted you and said, "Are you still here?" Because I didn't know.
I'm on till I kill, or I till the last hour of the last day. I can't. Ryan and I are both this way. Like, I can't stand the idea of relaxing when I haven't accomplished the goal. And so I cannot.
And take a nap.
I can't give it up, man. I gotta like last from morning till dark. I gotta strategize, chase. It's hard for me to like break away. But there were people during the weekdays, it was pretty dead. And then on the weekends, it got to be a carnival, a zoo. It was a madhouse. But you could go chase other critters somewhere else where people weren't congregated. You could find areas where there was a lot lower pressure, and then come back to other areas when everybody went home. And
that's a good point. I just thought I was out there on a Thursday, Friday, Monday. So I wasn't out there on the weekend. When I say I didn't see many people, I was there a Thursday, Friday, and Monday this year.
Saturday, Sunday was night and day different. Saturday, Sunday was by far, it was like a new world. I mean, people would show up Friday night after work, and then it would just be, and then people would leave Sunday night to head home. They might be there Monday morning and they leave, they might be there. But you get to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're really, you had quite a good hunt by yourself. So
that's the case with rifle hunts too, is we'll hunt a lot on the weekdays for that same reason.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that. And then, one of the criticisms is, how do you know, like your surveys and all of that? Some states have mandatory reporting, have all of these processes in place. They even, you're required to submit like the skull, they pull a tooth out, like they check for CWD, like Colorado, where Arizona is a lot more relaxed on that as well. So there's criticism, like, does Arizona even know how many deer are taken?
Right. Yeah. And we've heard that for years, but we started the post-hunt questionnaire program, which is voluntary, in 1962. The program has been the same that whole time. And so we have this long stream of trend data, and actually our guidelines where we say we want, say, hunt success between 20 and 25%, those guidelines were set in relation to those data. And so we know from some other little side research projects we did that the person who's successful has a higher chance of returning his questionnaire. And so we understand that there's a positive bias to the people that are successful, but that bias has been there consistently every year since 1962, and the guidelines are set taking that into account. So some people say, well, people that are successful are more likely to turn in their questionnaire, so all of your data is garbage. Well, that's not true. It's a little biased to the positive. We probably overestimate harvest a little bit. We probably overestimate hunt success a little bit because of that bias. Some research we've done shows about 10% that we're probably overestimating, but it's been the same for decades. And it's in relation to the guidelines that we set using those kind of data. And so that information, not garbage, is just that we acknowledge that there's a little very consistent bias, and it's still very useful for comparing this year's hunt success with what we said it was going to be and helping to manage the population like that. So I encourage everybody to send it in. We used to We used to have about 45% of the hunters return the questionnaires. I think we're a little bit below that, but we're coming back up to that level. And when you have almost half of the questionnaires, with statistics, you can easily estimate what harvest is. When you look at elections,
you can extrapolate that. When I was an auditor, we didn't have to sample 50% to get reliable data for anything.
And people that don't work with numbers, they don't understand that. You think, well, you have no idea what the other half did, but when you have a sample of 40%, that's a really good sample to forecast what the whole population's doing if it's done correctly.
That's ridiculously high. That you don't need a sample size that high to have like a 99% predictability for the rest of the sample. You really don't.
And when you talk about permitting, like the archery deer too, the javelina is permitted, and that's becoming popular. There are more and more people that are coming down in January because it's such a cool opportunity. And we're finding now that people that assume they could always get a javelina archery tag are finding now that they put in for the draw, put their first choice in, and they're not getting drawn. And so then you question, well, okay, now we're limiting people that want to shoot a javelina with a bow in certain game management units. Is the resource, could we offer more opportunity if we had more tags? So we're limiting people, and we may not need to biologically in some of those units with the number of tags. So that could happen with deer. We'd be limiting people maybe unnecessarily.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself, as a hunter, do I want a chance, every year, or do I want a higher percentage chance every third year? I'm just competitive. I'm like, I'd rather just give me a shot every year rather than there's plenty of hunts I can do right now between all the states, including Arizona, where I can do that. Those hunts are available. If I want to do the application process and did a draw tag, that's available already. So I like the way that it's set up in the sense that, I can get an over-the-counter tag and go hunt and see if I can fill that tag. But if I'm like, nah, I want a better archery tag, well, pick a state, start getting points, apply for the random draws. Like those are already available. The actual over-the-counter hunt opportunities that are available, like what Arizona is providing on the deer side of things, that's not very common today.
Yeah, and when you look at the type of deer that you get to see during the rut, it's not like we've got some kind of meat hunt where we're just overexploiting and just offering opportunity just for the sake of opportunity. You get the opportunity to as you and Ryan find out and know, you get opportunity to some really good bucks. There's a lot of mature bucks that you never see until January.
But exactly, that was the thing. This year felt like maybe a November, December type of non-rut hunt, right? Because they just weren't active. I mean, the biggest theory for why we weren't seeing the bucks we've seen in all the years prior is just the rut hadn't done its thing. And so in absence of that, those big old suckers, they don't expose themselves. They got to get motivated. They got to have something to make them act stupid. And the rut just wasn't there. And the other question we had though was, because in previous years we've been able to find big coos deer and big mule deer and get after them. This year, like I said, we didn't see very many big mule deer at all, and we did find big coos deer, but not as big as in the past. But we found a handful more than we did mule deer, and the coos deer that we found, they were chasing does like they were stuck on them like glue. So it was like, well, how much of it was just the fact that rut didn't kick in till after the rainfall, really, and didn't get those bucks up and moving. And normally in a normal year, they'd be doing that early January, but instead they were doing it the last few days of January this year. And had it been more of a normal year, I mean, the question is, are the bucks gone or were they there? We just didn't see them. And I think it's more they were there. We just didn't see them because there's no other people want to say the hunt's downhill. It's garbage. Arizona's doing a bad job. There's no deer there. It's junk. And I'm like, that is how doesn't make sense unless you had some kind of mass die off, CWD or some kind of drought that just killed everything. And we're not seeing that. The evidence for that isn't there. So the only other major thing we noticed was there's a giant wall there between Mexico and Arizona. how many of those deer that we'd see, crisscrossing the border, how many of those deer were Mexican deer that were coming in over and hanging out, rutting over here, and then we're back on the other side and got a wall built between them?
They got trapped. Yeah, I don't think that's. I don't think that's
the case either, because I think there's still holes and canyons where the deer can pass through.
Well, also some of the Mexican deer might have been trapped over here, so I don't think that's
it's a wash.
I think it's a wash, probably.
That's one thing I wondered.
Deer that went into Mexico, and I had to stop stalking him.
Well, that's one of the things I was wondering too, because there were mule deer. I told you this before, that genetically, some bucks that look like they're from different planets. Like there were mule deer that had bodies like donkeys and massive and huge, and they made their antlers almost look small because the bodies are so huge. And then there were bucks that were super mature, big deer, but half as big, just body wise, and they were light colored brown, and these were dark gray and black looking, and you'd see them square up, and I'm like, they don't look like the same species. They're both old. Like there's some genetic difference between these two that aren't, and
yeah. So there's not different kinds of deer, but there's a lot of things that can happen. Individual deer can, maybe through dominance or just smarts, because they've been around a while, might know how to find groceries a little bit better than other deer. Also, their first year in life, a buck that has really good nutrition its first year of life puts that gives that a head start the whole rest of his life. So if you take two bucks and one of them, he doesn't have very good nutrition his yearling year, and the other one has maybe brothers, doesn't, and the other one has really good nutrition the first year, and the other one doesn't, the whole rest of their life, first year, will never catch up. That first year, and even if you take a step back, that buck's mother, when it was pregnant with him, when that buck's mother has good nutrition, that can affect what he looks like when he's 5 years old. It's called a maternal effect. So a doe that has really good nutrition, that buck that she has 5 years later is going to be bigger than another doe that's in poor nutrition and has a buck at the same year. So their nutrition in the womb and their first year will set them on a course which will be different in the future.
Huh.
And so you could have some of that going on. You could have one buck that had great nutrition his first year, and he's just got this bigger body because he had that head start compared to another buck that might be the same age that maybe didn't have a good nutrition when it was in the womb and when it was in his first year.
Really? So they can't overcome being stunted like that during those critical phases.
They can be stunted at times. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I bred dogs for a while, and some mastiffs and such. If they didn't get the right stuff, then their growth plates, and it affected a lot of things during that phase, and then it affected them their whole life after that.
See, people like you and people in the domestic livestock industry have known some of this stuff forever. And we've got to realize that stuff's happening out in the wild too.
So if you have a young dumb mom who doesn't know how to find food and water and take care of its young very well, and it's a drought year, and she births a deer, and that thing can barely make it, the fact he makes it through his first year is a miracle. Mm-hmm. He's going to struggle the whole rest of his life then, compared to a buck that has a mom that's done this 100 times, super smart, knows where all the secrets are, where how to get the groceries, how to keep them safe, warm, and all that. That buck is going to have a much better future than makes sense. I mean, it's almost like a class difference in society. It's like,
yeah, right.
There
has been some studies with humans in, I forgot where it was like Greenland or Iceland or some place where they're living on the edge of subsistence, just trying to eke out a living, and that there's years and even decades if you go back in history 100 years, there's decades where they didn't have much food. They went into a famine and then a feast. And there's the human studies where they've gone and they've looked at those people that were born during a famine and those people that were born during a really fat time, and then they'll compare them when they're like 50 years old, and there's differences from what the conditions were when they were born.
Wow. Yeah, there's a difference between surviving and thriving. And that's how I noticed this year. It seemed like the deer were surviving, not thriving,
Exactly. I was pretty horrified when I saw some of the desert mule deer that we saw hunting. I was just shocked at how bad they looked. Now, the interesting thing is a whole bunch of whitetail were really fat. A whole bunch of whitetail actually looked good. And it's interesting, you talk about more rutting activity. I think the whitetail were in way better shape. And I saw pictures of some some whitetails that some people have killed that had a lot of fat on them. And so we were talking internally about the acorn crop. We had a couple local wildlife managers saying we had a really good acorn crop, and we know that'll put a lot of fat on deer. Where those whitetails are in the acorns, or they have access to the oaks, that could have been an issue. We had other local biologists say they didn't notice any more acorns than normal. So I don't really know what the true story is there, but that something like that can cause like a species difference in one being fat and the other one not, because of something as simple as an acorn crop.
Well, it seemed that the Coues deer definitely were more resilient than the mule deer. A lot of the mule deer we saw had hair missing, like they looked beat up. Their bones or hips were sticking out. You could see ribs. And then you'd come across the Coues deer, and they were plump and fit and looked good. And some of it, I wonder, it's strange the way that the mule deer live in the flats, which is more heavily impacted in the valleys and the flats from the drought than up on those mountains. And we'd see these Coues deer up on these mountaintops where it's like, it's a higher elevation. There seemed to be more greenery up there. They seem to live up there. Seem to be more moisture in the brush that's up there. But for some reason, the mule deer don't go there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting relationship, and I've been pondering it for a couple of decades, and it's difficult because we've got these desert mule deer in the flats, and they don't go up into our mountain islands. They don't go up into the ponderosa pine. The whitetail are up there. But when you go north in Arizona to Flagstaff, you have all the mule deer up in the ponderosa pines, and you run out of whitetails. You get just north of Flagstaff a little bit. There's no more cows whitetailed north of Flagstaff. And so you have this strange thing where the mule deer do fine in pine trees every place else, but they don't live in the pine trees here. They stay down in the flat. And you're right, they're much more seriously impacted with the drought. And that's why I think when we get really dry decades like in the 90s, our mule deer populations in the Southwest start shrinking, and the whitetail populations, they shrink too, but not as much. And so we've even got areas where mule deer populations have kind of receded, and whitetails are occupying a lower elevation where it used to be all mule deer, and now there's whitetails. And I think with the return of a good moisture regime, mule deer populations increase. I think you'll see that line slide back and forth.
One thing that I noticed over the years, and since I've studied this more and more, I've realized that weather, feed, habitat have a lot more impact on populations than hunters, human hunting. And too many people will go, oh, there's not as many mule deer as there were last year or the 3 years before. And they'll say it's because we let too many hunters hunt. And that's like the automatic go-to. And it's like, no, the weather did it. And whether you had hunting or no hunting, like that's the primary impact on those population levels.
Yeah, the nutrition in the Southwest is just rainfall, is just driving how good the survival is of those adults, and it's driving reproduction, how many fawns they have in there. But even if you're killing some does, the harvest is low compared to all these other major population effects. But even add to that is Arizona, we don't kill any does. It's buck only, except for the Kaibab Plateau where we kill some mule deer does to keep that population in check with the winter range. But hunters are just removing males. All of the females are still getting pregnant, and they're all dropping fawns. Research is pretty clear on that. And so if you have your buck to doe ratio at 50 bucks per 100 does or 20 bucks per 100 does, all the does are still dropping the same number of fawns, and all you're changing is the age structure of the males and the buck to doe ratio. If you hunt real heavy, you may have 1 buck for 10 does, and you may only have yearlings and 2-year-olds out there, but you're not affecting the total number of deer in the population, the total number of deer you see, other than those missing deer that the hunters remove. But you're not affecting reproduction or survival at all.
So what's the success rate of this over-the-counter public land archery hunt in Arizona?
I think last I looked was somewhere around 12%, I believe. That's the hunt success, the percent of hunters that are successful.
How much do you think, what number of that is mule deer versus Coues deer, cows deer?
That I don't know. I couldn't guess. Yeah, I haven't looked at that separately.
I'm just curious, like how many, is it like if you were to focus solely on cows deer, would that be a 5% success rate for that species?
It might be, yeah.
Well, where mule deer, separated them out, you have a 10% on mule deer, 5% on cows deer. I don't know.
It could very well be. You would think so.
It's a whole different ball game when you start saying, what's the success rate on mature deer? Now you're talking about a whole new set of statistics, and I think that number's low.
Yeah, very low.
I think you're seeing a lot of deer taken that are 2 years old, 1 year old, with archery, most of the guys we talked to that filled a tag, shot a spike or a forked horn or something.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Any
No.
cow's whitetail with a bow is absolutely a trophy.
I mean, that's what I've done the last couple of years is forked horn bucks. So I think, but my question is, when you start talking about success rate and you start talking about, this hunt, this is not a high odds hunt. You're really, when you go down there and you do this hunt, you're going down there for an opportunity. If you got a 5% chance of getting it done, or even 10, when you look at the success rate being as tough as it is, you're going down there for the opportunity, knowing you probably aren't going to fill that tag. There's a 1 in 10. There's a 1 in 10 chance or less that you're going to pull it off. And if you were to, one of my questions is, if you were to restrict the number of tags available, how would that impact the 1 in 10 chance? I almost submit that it would stay the same.
Yeah, or it would increase, because this sort of thing happened with Javelina, where it used to be wide open over the counter Javelina archery tags, not the rifle, but the archery tags. And then I think it was 92, we started restricting that so that all the Javelina archery tags were lottery style draw. And so the number of archers went way down, because before everybody would go out with their bow, they go out for a day and they counted as an archer for Javelina. And then pretty soon, if you made someone choose, I'm not going rifle hunting, I'm not going handgun hunting, I'm only going archery hunting because I chose an archery tag, then you get just the serious archers. So you got fewer archers because you've made them choose, and then you've got only the serious ones. And so hunt success went up. Number of hunters went down, hunt success went up, and the number of Javelina that were killed is the same as it always was. So you just had the serious people out there with a higher hunt success killing the same number.
That's kind of what I was wondering. You basically improve the quality of the hunt for the people who choose to do it.
Right. Yeah.
But your harvest rates are still the same. And that's kind of what I was getting at is you got to decide, as a state, as a management agency, what your goal is. What are you trying to do? And then you got to balance that with economics too. What really helps you fund the agency and helps you then help with all the other hunts that maybe are a draw associated and so forth. Because and let me ask about that, because the opportunity to go down there, throw your hat in the ring and go have some fun and do the hunt is nice. If you were to move it to a draw of some kind and you go down there and now you've got to apply and all of that, if the harvest rate stays pretty much the same as far as overall animals killed, the harvest rate would be higher. Let's say like it's 2 out of 10 now instead of 1 out of 10, but you just have fewer hunters. Yep. Is that a trade-off worth having? And back to what I said earlier, I kind of think no, because you've already got those opportunities in other locations, other states. You can, even within your own state, anybody can continue to apply for those tougher hunts, those higher odds hunts, those ones with greater percentage of success. They can always apply to those, and in the meantime, they can still when they don't draw that, go do their over-the-counter hunt. I think it's kind of nice.
Yeah. If your concern is the resource, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to not let as many people go and kill the same number of deer, because you're killing the same number of deer. But now, if your concern is crowding, then you can manage hunter crowding that way. But like you say, if you want a different experience, those are available.
Well, now when we were talking about the health of the deer, that was one of the things I heard people complaining about. Back to that, I didn't really notice, like you said, on the Coues deer, they seemed pretty healthy. The mule deer, I did notice a decline in health quite a bit. The question, though, is does the hunt typically, let's take this year out of it, does it put all this undue pressure on the deer so that they don't survive from year to year? From what I noticed, these deer they're so accustomed to they're chill, man. Like they're like, oh, there's a hunter, let's move. And then they just went back to life. They did not sit there and stress over the fact that they're being hunted constantly. They just seem to be adapted.
One of our biologists did his master's degree at University of Arizona, and what they did was they radio collared a bunch of cows whitetail in a mountain range not far from, just east of where we were hunting, and they they had a rifle, and they took the telemetry antenna and they chased the radio collared deer, and they would locate the radio collared deer and they'd fire a rifle, and the deer would run over the ridge, and they'd go chase it over that ridge, and they'd fire a rifle, and they kept doing that, and they were purposely doing that to monitor hunter disturbance because of the same argument. And this was back in the 90s. The same argument that people said, you've got these long seasons back to back, people are constantly harassing the deer, that's not good for the deer. And as much as they purposely harass them with the radio telemetry antenna, so they actually find the deer, they found no difference in reproduction, no difference in the number of fawns that they had, and so no impact on the population. So then you say, well, the average hunter is going to flush a deer, probably not going to find that whitetail again, not in that habitat, not the way whitetails are. And these researchers were using telemetry antennas to find the deer multiple times. So if they couldn't affect any kind of negative change to the reproduction doing that, then a hunter flushing a deer and then another hunter flushing the deer later, it's not going to have a negative impact on reproduction. If you just look at the number of times any individual deer in the population, all those thousands of deer that are out there in that area, how many times is each individual deer really disturbed? Not really that much when you think of it that way. There's so many that are just in remote areas that no one's going to, and then the seasons are only 7 days long. So they get it done. They certainly get it done.
I'm curious, like economics wise, looking at the state and the agency and what works well for the agency, does the over-the-counter system, or the draw system, if you were to limit it, which one how does that impact the economics?
Boy, I'm not sure because I don't deal with that part of it, but with the over-the-counter and the number of people that are able to do it with that low hunt success, like you said, that probably generates a lot of conservation dollars compared to, limited draw like bighorn sheep, where we just have a few of them. Right. So it does. So a lot of times people accuse biologists and they accuse agencies. You just got way too many tags out there because you're just money hungry.
You just want to make money.
We hear that all the time, and that model is not going to work for very long. If you're just trying to make money, you're going to kill off all your deer. We manage these populations with guidelines that we set in cooperation with the public. We go out to the public and we say, okay, we're sitting at a guideline that says we want to maintain $20 to $30 per 100 does. How does that sound? Do we need to increase them or decrease them? We do this whole public process, and we decide whether we're going to stay the same. And so with the public, we establish these guidelines, and then we survey the populations and we manage them within those guidelines. And so charges that we're trying to get rich or something, they just don't make any sense when you really understand how we manage deer populations.
Because I heard a pretty solid rant the other day from an individual friend of mine on Instagram saying, talking about the game camera, the banning of game cameras, which is a hot topic, and that there's some bitterness there saying, it doesn't matter if you ban the game cameras. The real issue is how Arizona is doing a poor job managing the wildlife.
Well, any of our biologists are happy to talk about specifics about what anybody is not happy with. And I was a regional biologist dealing with all of the hunt recommendations and all the surveys for about 23 years in the Tucson office. And I fielded these calls all the time. Someone would call and say, I just got done hunting in this certain unit. We spent 8 days glassing. We saw 1 spike and 473 does. And you guys have way too many tags. And so I say, okay, hold on. And I will pull my binder out, which has all my data in it. And I turn to that game management unit, turn to that species. And then I look and I say, okay, we surveyed over 1,000 deer for the last 3 years. Here's what the buck to doe ratios were. Here's what the fawn to doe ratios were. They're both within or above guidelines. The trends of the buck to doe ratio after seeing 1,000 deer from a helicopter, the trend in the buck to doe ratio is stable, or it's increasing, or maybe it's decreasing a little. So I would explain all of that data to them and say, here's the guidelines we use to manage them. Here's what the data in that unit for that species looks like. And usually by the end of the phone call, the people were like, well, okay, I can see where you're coming from. It's good to know that you guys are just not randomly issuing tags. It's actually based on a lot of science and a lot of hard work. So, I was always happy to talk to an individual about what specifically are you unhappy with. Let's look at the data and let's see what's going on.
Yeah. I think that sometimes I wonder when you're out there, and even if you're a guide and you're really hitting it hard, and you're like, well, 3 years I had great hunts, in the last 2 years there's a serious decline in my hunt experience. you are talking to an individual who spends a lot of time out there and is glassing and hunting. And so there's a certain value to that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also still an anecdotal piece because you don't have a whole picture, and cause and effect, just correlation is not causation. You know, you just because, you know, you're correlating two things doesn't mean that you're actually identifying why something has occurred. And so sometimes people will say, this is why. I already know the answers why I'm seeing what I'm seeing, when they actually don't know the answer. It's still a guess. Like, there's a whole different ballgame when you're actually trying to get data to support your conclusion. And that's tricky stuff. And I think I like the fact, I think it's what I don't want to see are agencies responding to social pressures. I want them making decisions based on data, not someone's opinion that spends a lot of time out there. I want them to consider that, look into it, but I also want real data to back it up.
Yeah.
I've been in areas, Lampers and I, we go in and we hunt some bears, right? We smoke some bears, and they're giant and they're awesome. We each fill our tags. We get our bear tags filled, and we come out of there. We'll talk to 10 other dudes who went back there, same spot, and didn't see a single bear, and they were there 10 days. It's like, they're like, it's downhill. It's crap. It didn't work. And it's like, maybe all I know is, you know,
you and Ryan are really lucky.
Yeah. One year I'll go out there and we'll find, you know, we'll kill bears in the first 3 days. Some states you get 2 tags. We'll kill 4 bears each. And next thing you know, we'll go back the next year and we got to hunt 20 days to accomplish the same thing we did in 3 days. Is that because there's too many people hunting and they've killed all the bears? Or is that a management problem? Or is that just the nature of hunting?
Yeah, that's really important, because people have those experiences. And like you say, when someone's out there and they're a very experienced person, spends a lot of time out there, and what they're seeing is real because they saw it. And what some biologist from an agency is telling them is not really real because that's not their experience. And so it's really difficult for an agency and for a biologist, because I struggled with this for years, when you have consistently gathered data, harvest data and survey data, and you're managing the population with consistently gathered data. And then you talk to someone who's really, really good at glassing, has been doing it for a long time, and they spent 8 days out in an area and they couldn't find any mature bucks and not many bucks at all. I mean, I dealt with that for a long time, and I don't know, what do you say then? I don't know what to say about that. I mean, we just, as an agency, we have to manage consistently on very scientific, robust data, and I don't know what happens sometimes when people just have this other experience that doesn't jive with the data.
Right. I think nature is a thing that is nature, you know, too. And so, for example, you might have an age class completely missing. You know, maybe the data didn't capture, and that means you go out and you're missing an entire age class for some reason, or there's just not that many. And so you think the hunt's downhill. Well, it kind of is for a year or two, and then it's back, you know, because you see that a lot in certain states with whitetail regions where they get like different diseases that wipe out entire mature, like the old deer are gone, or it affects the young deer, the 1 and 2 year olds over a period, or you see it in winter kill in Colorado, where 2 years in a row all the fawns die. And then you just have these gaps in 4 and 5 year old deer, and you're like, the hunt's garbage, too many tags. And it's like, again, correlation is not causation. It's not always I've learned over years, it has more to do with nature and habitat often than management strategies. And you see this for years. I learned this when I was studying about waterfowl, and they were talking about the impacts of hunting on waterfowl. Because from a novice, I was like, how many ducks can I shoot per season, per day? It's like fish. Like untold numbers. And I'm like, that's a lot of ducks to kill.
Nationwide.
That's a lot of ducks. Like, sure, I won't go out that many days, but some dudes will. I mean, that is a lot of birds. And I'm like, how many are there? I mean, how many across all the states? And then as I was doing research and learning about it, the amount of water and habitat would kick up billions of birds. And the amount of that hunters could wipe that amount out was like a fraction. And I realized that when there was a massive die-off of birds, it had to do with not enough water for eggs and nesting, and you would have entire populations disappear. Half the population gone overnight from weather, not from hunters. Yeah. And so by saying we need to cut back on hunting all this amount because we've had these problems with populations, well, they'll come back overnight. Jackrabbits are a good example, rabbits in general. Like you're like, we better stop hunting because there's no rabbits. Well, they're fecund. What is it? Fecundity or whatever. Their ability
reproduction.
Their reproduction is so insane that it's like you don't need to reduce the number of tags necessarily, because whether you do or don't, that's not the real issue. It has more to do with the habitat and the weather, which you can't always control. It has more to do with putting those guzzlers and those water sources in, doing other management things than reducing tag numbers. And when I started to put those together, I started to realize, not to diminish the impact that humans have on hunting, harvest rates and tags. We do. But it's so much more controlled and less impactful than what we as people think is the issue.
Yeah, reproduction is such a big part of that whole equation. So we'll get like epizootic hemorrhagic disease in North Dakota, South Dakota, and it'll wipe out a big significant portion of the deer population. But really the drivers of populations is you get just really good years with good nutrition, and every doe has twins. And so now you've got one individual turning into 3 individuals overnight, literally. And if you get a second good year or a third good year where some of those offspring get to rebreeding age, and then all of a sudden they're having their own fawns, you get this exponential growth rate. And so just a few good years of good nutrition for almost any wildlife population is where you get these giant population blossoms.
Yeah, that's why I think it's smart, if you have the ability to do so and you really love hunting, it's your passion, explore other regions and other states, because, down south, like you're dealing with this disease you're talking about, you're dealing with droughts, you're dealing with things that can come and go, and you'll go through phases where it's not a great hunt for a year or two. But in this other region, it's a great hunt. You collect points. I collect points, in certain states. And I'm calling my uncle saying, okay, uncle, how good did the elk go into the winter season? And what is your prediction for rain coming up this next year? What kind of growth are we going to see? And how active do you think the elk are going to be this fall? And how good a hunt is it going to be? How much good rut activity are we going to get? And he's like, this year looks like it's going to be kind of just an average year. Definitely you got 18 points, maybe wait, because you're guaranteed to draw, maybe wait another year. Or, dude, this is the year. If you got points, throw your name in the hat. You got to try it. We're stomping right now. There's some killer age classes out there. And it's like, that's because it's nature. And so being able to go to another area, in other regions, going Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, it's surprising to me how many people will complain, for instance, like a resident of a state, and they've never attempted to leave the state. And it's like, it's a 2-hour drive to go to the state next door. And the tag's like $400 or $500, but you're spending a lot of money just taking time off from work and driving to where you go. I remember when it first hit me, I was like, I drive like 7 hours to get to my hunt spot in Oregon. And I can get to my hunt spot in Idaho in 6. Okay. And it's a better hunt in Idaho. Just that.
It's an 8-hour drive.
Non-resident boundary thing is.
I'm in Arizona, and it's an 8-hour drive for me to go to the Kaibab.
Yeah.
Hunt the Kaibab. Right.
Crazy.
Yep.
So anyway, it's all an interesting topic. But this year, different year in Arizona, but still. We managed to pull it off. It took a lot of days. And
that's pretty amazing. Yeah, I think your question was, are all those mature bucks gone this year, or are they still there? And I think you'll answer that next year. You'll answer your own question next year, I think.
I think so too. And we saw giants. Like Ryan saw a giant, and my cousin Ben saw a giant, and we saw pictures of giants because the Border Patrol guys have night cameras. And a few of them run into us. And they're like, hey, I know you. You're gritty. hey,
Yeah.
guess what? There's a giant deer over here, and it's all night photos. I'm like, you got any day photos? No, he's never taken a step during the day. Not once. Not once have we seen him during the day. And I'm like, yeah, well, nobody is. That's why he's a giant, and you need that rut to be hot so that buck finally decides to make a mistake. And I just don't think that was the case this year. And when you start seeing photos at night, because these Border Patrol guys have some intense equipment, guides and outfitters have game cameras. We've seen some of the bucks in the area we're in. Most of it was all nighttime movement. And so when bucks are moving at night like that, it's not like they're not there. You're just never going to see them. And some of those deer, they just, to be motivated to move during the day, they're going to need a good competitive, interesting, exciting rut. It's sort of like I've considered drawing a rifle coos deer tag. And I keep looking. Okay, I'd love to hunt coos deer with a rifle, but everybody I know that does that struggles to find the kind of deer I see during the rut with a bow. So it's like, yes, you have a weapon that greatly increases your odds of killing a buck, but you have a season in which those true giants, are never to be found. So I'm torn between, do I do it because I want the true giant, and I'd rather try it with the bow and see the giant than carry a rifle and see lots of great bucks, but not the true giant.
Yeah, if you shot a cow's whitetail in November, you'd have to just hunt coatis then when you came down.
Well, I'll tell you what, I keep getting points. And I'm like, well, one of these years, if I don't tag out, at the beginning of the year, and I still have a tag in my pocket, I'll probably actually put in for one of the tags. But right now, it's like the way it works.
Be the way to do it.
I'm just like, I'm going to keep killing giants if I can in January.
You could also just put in for the December too. If you didn't kill one in January, just put in for the December. That way, if you got one, you'd have a really good tag. Some of the early rut activity, the last couple weeks in December, you get the beginning of that bell-shaped curve of rut activity. You'll get some of that rut activity, and the number of permits are limited to like 50 per game management unit. Very limited. That's
kind of what I'm doing right now. That's the strategy. Is I'm just like, hey, if I don't kill in January with my tag, then I'm going to throw my name in the ring. I'm just going to keep getting points, and then try to get some of the best, one of the best rifle tags for coos deer in the state, or maybe I'll use it on an archery mule deer, tag too. But my goal is to tag out every January on a big buck
and a big one,
cows or mule deer. I don't care. I don't care. I just want big. At this point, though, I kind of want the coos deer. I set a goal to try to get a big mule deer this year, and that was awesome. Different hunt, man. It's a different hunt. The mule deer are different to hunt than the cows deer, because the mule deer gather in big herds, and the cows deer don't. They're scattered. And,
we used to have, among biologists, we'd have a little inner office kind of competition between the mule deer hunters and the whitetail hunters. And I love mule deer, so I was always mule deer hunting. And some of our biologists would say, or some of the game wardens would say, Jim, when are you going to take the training wheels off and go after whitetails?
Well, I used to think that, but now that I've killed two cows deer and one mule deer, I'm like, I don't know, man. They're both difficult in totally different ways. I didn't give a mature mule deer enough credit. I think that young mule deer and young coos deer, they're just easier to kill. They're young. Yeah. They're young. Yeah. But it doesn't matter which species, when you target something old, it just becomes another level of difficulty. And it doesn't matter which species, but you're going to deal with different challenges. I think the big mature mule deer bucks and the way that they herd up, and there's just a lot of them, and the way they're in the flats, you're just under a whole new set of conditions to try to kill that buck. Whereas with a big mature coos deer, they just are switched on, looking everywhere, but they run. They'll run 400 yards this way, 400 yards back, 300 yards there, 200 yards there, and you're just like, what? And you could spend all day getting in position, and then they just sprint 1,000 yards to this top, and then they're just chasing over there. They're like endlessly energetic, and they're just so fast. And then it's like you either shoot them at 20 yards or 70 yards. Like in between, they'll dodge. It's a weird. Right. All of it's hard. They're just smaller targets though too. So I can't decide. But for me, it's like it's like I'm at a point where the older deer get me excited, and I don't care which species. Ryan is totally biased toward mule deer. Totally biased. He complains about shooting a Boone and Crockett.
Yeah, whitetail.
Like I just want to punch him in the mouth. But I'm so excited about either one. And this is an opportunity over the counter every year. And so it's just like, man, it's kind of this, not necessarily secret anymore, but the over the counter archery deer tag in Arizona is sort of my favorite hunt to look forward to each year.
And you have the weather, and you have the whole hunting season kind of over, and you just kind of wind down, come down to Arizona in some good weather.
It's quiet, have fun, and peaceful. There's a light breeze. You're wearing a t-shirt, and I'm not hiking tons of miles. It's its own like mental challenge, but it's different. It is a hunt to look forward to, unique, different than any other hunt I do. It's a special hunt. I think it's really hard. And if I only had limited vacation time and I had to choose, this would be a tough hunt to pick because of the fact that it's such a low odds hunt. So that's something a guy has to consider. For a resident, you're going in your backyard for the weekend. It's a no-brainer to me. How fun is that? You got long seasons. You don't fill your tag in January. You come back later in the year. You don't do it in August. Come back. It's like, what a great opportunity. And then the fact that you can have two tags at the same time, and you can choose to fill either one, whichever one works. Yeah, I think Arizona's got a pretty sweet system.
Yeah, just don't tell anybody, right?
Yeah, it's the cat's out of the bag. Like some people are like, you don't tell people what state you're hunting in, on any of your films or any of your kind. I'm like, yeah, except for Arizona, because I can't. How do you hide it?
You can't hide that. Yeah, that's right.
It's the only January deer hunt in the nation, really, in a desert. It's cat's out of the bag, man. It's kind of hard not to. Might as well.
You could say it's Mexico. We'd have to speak Spanish though.
I know that'd be a hard sell when there's like all these dudes in orange or like driving around in the background. Yeah, it's a fun hunt though. I'm excited. I'm excited to hit it every year, and I think I'm looking forward to it again. I'm glad we could connect. We should talk a little bit more about your mule deer specific. What do you got going on, by the way, right now? Any new books? Anything in the works?
A bunch of mule deer people are putting together a big book that's going to be a pretty awesome compendium of everything mule deer. Got experts for different topics writing different chapters. Like Matt Kaufman and Hal Sawyer and some of these guys are doing all that Western migration stuff, writing migration chapter. We've got Kevin Monteith at University of Wyoming, who's done a lot of nutrition stuff, heading up a nutrition chapter. Kevin Hurley, who did a whole bunch of really important predator research in Idaho, is heading up the predator chapter. So it's not really geared for the hunter. It's geared for biologists. But these days, so much of the hunting public are well informed and hungry for good biological information that it'll be valuable to a lot of people.
Nice. Very cool. And people can get a hold of you. They can connect with you on Instagram.
Yep.
And it's Jim.Deere.
Yep, with an E at the end. DEERE, Jim Deere.
Yep.
You look for the John Deere logo that I photoshopped into a mule deer.
And which is awesome. And I always am like, I gotta talk to my friend Jim Deere. And it's like, I mean Jim Heffelfinger. There's also you were on Randy Newberg recently. You were on his one of the episodes, well, a number of episodes, but one of the ones I particularly enjoyed was Prince of Wales Island.
You didn't enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah, that looked pretty cool. I've done it myself. It's tough hunt.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that was a bucket list item for me. For 15 years, I've wanted to go Southeast Alaska and hunt Sitka blacktails, and it was just an incredible experience, not just as a hunter because it was a cool hunt, but as a deer biologist. Spent a whole career talking about deer subspecies and deer evolution and how deer differ. And I always hear about those Sitka blacktails up there, but to go up there and spend a week in their habitat, in their environment, see them firsthand, see them close hand, it was just unbelievable for me. It was just really, really cool.
Aren't they different?
Oh, they're so neat. They're just so neat. Little short little ears, and they're big fat like whitetail like dark tails, and their preorbital glands in front of their eyes are like white, which you don't see in other deer, or their dark faces. So many neat things about those.
They're so stocky and square and blocky.
Just chubby. They are, yeah.
Yeah. You see the world record Coues deer, and then you see the world record Sitka deer side by side.
Yeah.
And the Sitka buck is bigger body, bigger head, bigger everything, smaller antlered though than the Coues deer, which is all dainty like a ballerina with a giant rack.
Those things. We had 4 inches of rain in Tucson, and I said that I think I saw 4 inches of rain come off a deer when it shook. When a Sitka blacktail, when it shook, I think I saw 4 inches of rain come off it.
And they got those chocolate horns. But those episodes, it was a series. What is it, 3 or 4 parts? And
there's 3 parts on YouTube, and then it'll come out on Amazon Prime and Fresh Tracks TV.
And you still got to get one, right?
Yeah.
Got to go back.
Just being there and seeing those things. I know it. Oh, I could do that. That was so incredible.
I like. What time of year was it?
That was first week in November. It was the last day of October and the first 8 days of November. So it was about a week before the peak of rut. It was planned that way to get into the pre-chasing phase. And really, I was with Jim Bechtel there, who lives on Prince of Wales Island. He's got cameras out. He's been tracking deer activity for a couple of years, and you could clearly see this year when we were there, rutting activity was a lot lower than it was the previous year. So things were kind of like your experience. Things were real different this year when we were there, and I'm not sure why, but they were noticeably, and you could demonstrate how different they were.
It's wild how they respond to bleats and distress calls. Those deer just come charging in. I've done that myself. I've never hunted them that late in the season. I've only hunted Sitka blacktail in August, September, like when they're still in velvet or just right after they shed up in the alpine areas, which is
that's a whole different hunt too.
Different hunt, like a night and day hunt. You have to be ready to get wet. It's like hunting blacktails in Oregon coast and the Willamette. It's just big old growth. It's a fascinating place to be. Different hunt, but I want to do that, and it's so different than Kodiak. Like nothing similar about that hunt. I
didn't until recently kind of realize the differences, but Kodiak seems to be a whole different experience too.
Just open
you shoot
tundra.
your deer and grab it, get it to the boat quick before the brown bears get you.
That's right. That's right. All right, Jim. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it. Folks, check them out over at jim.deer on Instagram, and let's do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, stay gritty.